One of Chelsea's biggest failures over the years has been the inability to replace Didier Drogba, a Premier League winning centre-forward who gave you the physicality to play long, the box presence to put balls in the danger zone, but also the silk to link play. This is something that has followed the Blues for years, with most striker signings being instantly compared to the Ivorian. But what if Chelsea took a similar but different approach? The only man who has come close to Didier Drogba's legacy at Chelsea as a striker is Diego Costa, winning 2 Premier League titles, leading the line for the Blues. At 6'1", Costa was slightly smaller than Drogba, but had the heart of a Chelsea striker, giving him a different type of box presence. In today's video, we are going to discuss why Liam Delap could scrap the new Drogba narrative, but instead become Chelsea's new Costa. In order for us to understand how Liam Delap could fit in at Chelsea, we first need to speak about Maresca's system, the striker role within that, and how he likes to utilise Nicholas Jackson. Enzo Maresca has basically come out this week and said that Nicholas Jackson is basically his perfect number 9. But why is this, and how does it suit Enzo Maresca's system, having Nicholas Jackson through the middle? Well, to begin with, in build-up, he does want that front three to pin the back line, have the ability to not only drop in, but also spin in behind. That includes coming into link play in a pentagon shape at times with the attacking midfielders and the 2 pivot players, but also being a constant threat, running in behind, bullying defenders, making those channel runs, and being a nuisance for the opposition team. But this is us talking about what Nicholas Jackson is good at. But what isn't he good at, and why do we need another striker? Where Jackson has struggled this season, it is more about when we're sustaining pressure in the opposition half, trying to create chances, break down those low blocks, put balls into the box and finish in a clinical fashion. Not only does Jackson lack that aerial threat, but he also lacks that instinctive box threat and box movement to force goals, but also open up space for others. And of course, with Chelsea being the highest big chance creators in the Premier League, Nicholas Jackson is one of those culpable for missing plenty of big chances and underperforming his XG. Therefore, with this striker search, you want to bring somebody in who can do those roles that Nicholas Jackson does to a really high level, but also has the extra clinical edge, box threat and box presence to bring alongside it. And that is where Liam Delap comes in. Starting with their similarities in terms of their linking ability, Delap, he's able to come into those deeper areas, put those balls in behind. Sometimes they can vary, but he has the technical ability to ensure that he can play those passes, connect with his teammates, and drop in to those areas to help progress and link play. Delap is very effective when running the channels. He progresses play when he does so, 2.23 progressive carries per 90, even more than Nicholas Jackson, being able to drop in and carry that ball over large distances, usually into the channels, and a bit in a one-man band kind of sense, especially for Ipswich. However, this isn't just with Ipswich, because you can translate this to the first phase of build-up, as we did earlier, talking about the ability to play over the press and go direct into those outlet players. But he's not just a big man, he has the ability to use his feet and manipulate his own shots with deceptive movements, such as this, moving into the box, using those short, tight, quick steps with step-overs involved, if needed, little body shimmies to then open up the shooting angle and get his shot away. When we're talking about that one-man band, that ability to make something happen, playing direct, I always think of this goal from Diego Costa against West Brom when Chelsea only won 1-0 and they needed this goal. Diego Costa making that run into the channel, making it work, even though it wasn't pretty. He was hustling it for the ball. He made it work in the channel, managed to swivel the defender, work his way into the box and just craft something out of nothing, which again is a skill Delap has of his own. We can't speak about Delap without talking about that little sort of instincts in the box, those little intricate box movements, but also the finishing that comes with it, with his unbelievable ball striking. Now, I think it's important to note that I do think Delap does often defer to power over accuracy. However, I don't necessarily blame him when he has the ability to make the net ripple, whether it's inside or outside the box. However, that's not to say we haven't seen very clever finishes from Delap where he isn't always deferring to that power generated through the laces. Many people, when talking about Nicholas Jackson, they wouldn't be too disappointed in his overall play. It would all mostly come down to that ability to finish off and to be clinical in front of goal to make sure that we take advantage when we are on top. Whilst Jackson tends to underperform his XG, Liam Delap this season has overperformed his XG by plus 0.12 per 90. Now let's get on to the fun bit, because what everybody wants is somebody who can handle themselves against defenders, somebody a bit different to Nicholas Jackson in that sense, and somebody who can be a nuisance inside the box. And that is something exactly that I think Liam Delap can be, whilst not being maybe a Victor Osimhen type of box presence, but instead being a little bit more like Diego Costa, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, one thing that Liam Delap absolutely excels in is the usage of his body and frame. He's 6'1", he's very broad-shouldered, and he is a bulky striker. He is good at using his strength, but also manipulating his body to push weight and also use micro movements to off-balance defenders. Now, funnily enough, this example does actually show Liam Delap off balance instead, but he is attacking the ball. He's trying to be a nuisance against Arsenal, and he's trying to win a foul with the weight distribution and shift of his body. Now, something Jackson doesn't do often enough is just try to occupy defenders and be a nuisance. He's often sort of dragged towards the ball rather than thinking ahead and of that next step and how he can be a nuisance in the box even if he isn't going to touch the ball. Here you can see Delap standing off of the defenders a little bit, trying to attract them away from the front post, knowing that that is where he's going to burst into. So he's trying to attract multiple defenders at once to open up the space for himself. Delap is essentially in a 3v1 in this scenario, but he makes the dart across the box at the perfect time to arrive on the cross, and he knows all he has to do is get any sort of touch just to be a nuisance and just to force something on goal, which is exactly what he does, and he ends up getting his reward for it. And again, this is a quality that massively reminds me of Diego Costa, who would always be sniffing in and around the box, knowing that all he has to do is annoy defenders, but try and get that last pivotal touch on the ball to send it goalwards and give himself a chance of earning that reward, which of course is a goal. Again, similarly to Delap, he knows that he's maybe not going to overpower every single defender in the league, but he's very good with his back to play. He can use that muscle and that brawn to manipulate the defender's body weight before shifting and being able to put himself in a position to shoot, basically scrapping and hustling for that just one chance on goal, which again, in this instance for Costa, does come and does result in a goal. So when we talk about box presence, we're not just talking about their ability to put their head on the ball, and even so, Delap does excel in this anyway, because he's even playing in an Ipswich side who crossed the least amount of times in the Premier League. He still does get just under 2 aerial duels won per 90. But it's also about gravity, and this is something I often talk about with somebody like Victor Osimhen, those runs and that persistence in the box to attack lost causes, even if it's something they're not going to get their head on. It can then cause a ripple effect of chaos, which allows other players to attack the box and find that space instead. And well, I think this last one is literally the most fun of them all. And of course, it is just their attitude and how they are as players. We're looking at Delap, somebody he's only 21 years old, but he's willing to wind up opposition players. And who does that remind you of? Somebody that used to do the exact same thing for Chelsea. It's this attitude that translates to the way he plays, the way that he's willing to fight, even if he's very unlikely to win a duel. He will fight until the end, and he will make sure that he can hustle his way to getting himself into advantageous areas, even if it isn't looking likely. In the same way that Diego Costa did, whenever you played against Delap, you know you've been in a game for 90 minutes. And I think this is something that Chelsea strikers have always really represented, especially those of Didier Drogba and Diego Costa. So if I was to give you one thing to take away from this video, it would be the fact that the main advantages from Liam Delap and why you should want him at Chelsea isn't even necessarily to do with his exact qualities on and off the ball, but instead it's to do with that passion, desire, and that heart, and that comparison he has to that with Diego Costa. I think he's somebody that the fans would get behind. I think he's somebody that would scrap till the very end to make sure he's getting those last-ditch touches inside the box, whether it results in a goal for him or whether it results in somebody else arriving to score instead. After all, something that we've seen with Marc Cucurella recently is that you don't always have to be the tallest or even have the best finishing instincts to score goals. It's all about that intensity and willingness to put yourself in the box and make something happen.